Sarah didn't recognize her reflection anymore. The woman in the mirror had dark circles under her eyes and a perpetual frown that seemed etched into her face. 6 months had passed since Mark walked out on their 12-year marriage, leaving her alone with their 2 children and a mortgage she could barely afford. The separation papers sat unsigned on her kitchen counter, a daily reminder of her failure. "Mom, Lily won't share the cereal," 8-year-old Jason called from the kitchen. Sarah closed her eyes, counting to 5 before responding. "I'm coming." These days, even the smallest conflicts between her children tested her patience. The morning routine had become a battle, getting the kids ready for school, herself prepared for work, and everyone out the door on time felt like scaling a mountain daily. Her job as an administrative assistant at a local insurance office barely covered the bills, and the child support from Mark, when it arrived, was never enough. Today was particularly difficult. Her car had made a strange noise on the drive home yesterday, and she dreaded the potential repair costs. The credit card bills were piling up, and her mother had called again, pushing her to just forgive Mark and work things out, as if it were that simple. "Mommy, look." 4-year-old Lily proudly held up a drawing, inadvertently knocking over her juice. The orange liquid spread across the kitchen table, seeping into Sarah's planner and the permission slip she needed to sign for Jason's field trip. Something inside her snapped. "Can't you be more careful?" The words came out harsher than intended. Lily's face crumpled, and Sarah immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry, sweetie. Let's clean this up together." As she wiped up the mess, her phone buzzed with a text from her boss, requesting she come in early for a meeting. Sarah's stomach knotted with anxiety. The company had been making cuts, and she'd heard rumors about another round of layoffs. After dropping the kids at school, Sarah sat in her car in the office parking lot, trying to compose herself. She hadn't cried in front of the children. She'd been careful about that. But alone, the tears came freely. She was failing at everything: marriage, motherhood, finances. The weight of it all pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. The meeting was exactly what she feared. Due to company restructuring, her position would be eliminated in 2 weeks. Her boss expressed regret, offered a modest severance package, and promised a reference letter. Sarah nodded mechanically, thanked him, and somehow made it back to her desk without collapsing. That evening, after tucking the children into bed, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by bills and job listings. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock, a wedding gift from Mark's parents. She'd always hated that clock, but tonight its steady rhythm was oddly comforting. Her phone rang, displaying her friend Rachel's name. Sarah nearly ignored it, not wanting to admit how bad things had gotten, but something pushed her to answer. "Hey," Rachel said, her voice warm. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while." The simple kindness broke through Sarah's carefully constructed walls. "I lost my job today," she said, voice cracking. Rachel listened as everything spilled out. The job, the money problems, her fears about failing her children, the crushing loneliness. When Sarah finally fell silent, exhausted from the confession, Rachel didn't offer platitudes or quick solutions. "I'm coming over tomorrow," she said firmly. "We'll figure this out together. You're not alone, Sarah." After hanging up, Sarah walked to the window and looked out at the quiet neighborhood. For the first time in months, the knot in her chest loosened slightly. She'd been so determined to handle everything herself, to prove she didn't need anyone. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe asking for help wasn't weakness, but survival. Sarah returned to the kitchen counter and picked up the separation papers. Tomorrow would be hard. The day after would be too. But tonight, she'd made a small step. She'd let someone in. As she placed the papers back down, she realized she didn't have to figure everything out at once. For now, it was enough to know she wasn't facing it alone. Rachel arrived the next morning with coffee, bagels, and a notebook. Sarah had barely slept, but having someone else in her kitchen, someone who knew the truth and hadn't run away, gave her a strange new energy. "First things first," Rachel said, opening the notebook. "Let's make a list of everything we need to tackle." They spent the morning organizing Sarah's finances, creating a bare-bones budget, and listing potential job opportunities. Rachel, who worked in HR at a healthcare company, reviewed Sarah's resume and suggested improvements. The task was overwhelming, but breaking it down into actionable steps made it feel less impossible. "There's a position opening in our billing department," Rachel mentioned casually. "The pay is about the same as what you were making, and the hours would work with the kids' schedule. Sarah looked up from the stack of bills she was sorting. "You think I could get it?" "I think you should apply," Rachel said, not making promises but offering something just as valuable, belief. After Rachel left, Sarah spent hours updating her resume and writing a cover letter for the healthcare position. When the children returned from their day at the neighbor's house, she was still working at the kitchen table, but with a focus she hadn't felt in months. That night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah made a decision. She called her mother. "I need help, Mom," she said, pushing past her pride. "Not advice. Just help with the kids while I look for work." The silence on the other end made Sarah brace herself for criticism, but her mother's voice was unexpectedly gentle. "Of course. What days do you need me?" 2 weeks passed in a blur of job applications, interviews, and careful financial management. Sarah sold some furniture and jewelry she no longer needed, negotiated payment plans with utility companies, and even reached out to Mark for consistent child support. The conversation was tense but productive, ending with his promise to set up automatic payments. The interview at Rachel's company went well, though the position would take 3 weeks to start if she got it. In the meantime, Sarah picked up temporary work doing data entry from home and evening shifts at a local diner. The schedule was exhausting, but each deposit into her bank account felt like a small victory. One evening, Sarah returned from her diner shift to find her mother had helped the children make dinner. The kitchen was a mess, but the sight of Jason and Lily proudly presenting a lopsided casserole brought tears to her eyes. "We cooked for you, Mommy," Lily exclaimed, her small face beaming. "You worked too hard," Jason added solemnly, echoing words he'd probably heard from his grandmother. Sarah knelt and hugged them both. "This is perfect. Thank you." Later, as her mother prepared to leave, she handed Sarah an envelope. "It's not much, but it might help until you're on your feet." Sarah started to refuse. Her relationship with her parents had always been complicated, with money being a particular point of tension, but she stopped herself. "Thank you," she said instead, accepting the gift and the support it represented. The following week, Sarah received a call from Rachel's company offering her the billing position. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. That night, she celebrated with the children by making popcorn and building a fort in the living room, something they hadn't done since before the separation. As they cuddled together watching a movie, Jason looked up at her. "Are we going to be okay now, Mom?" The question hit her hard. Children noticed everything, absorbed every worry and tension. She tried to shield them, but they'd felt the uncertainty anyway. "We're already okay," she said, hugging him closer. Different than before, but okay. Sarah began to establish new routines. Sunday became meal prep day, with the children helping to make simple dishes for the week ahead. She set up a dedicated workspace in the corner of the living room for her job, which would start with 2 weeks of remote training. Her mother came by 3 afternoons a week, slowly rebuilding their relationship through the practical work of childcare and housekeeping. One evening, Sarah found herself with an unexpected moment of quiet. The children were asleep, the house was reasonably tidy, and tomorrow's lunches were packed. She made a cup of tea and sat on the back step, looking at the small yard that desperately needed attention. The grass was overgrown, and weeds had taken over what used to be her flower bed. 6 months ago, the sight would have sent her spiraling into shame and inadequacy. Tonight, she simply added, "Learn about gardening," to her mental list of future projects. She wasn't trying to recreate her old life anymore, but building something new, something that was entirely hers. Sarah's phone chimed with a text from Rachel. "How are you holding up?" Sarah looked around at her imperfect but functioning home. Getting there, she typed back, "One day at a time." It wasn't a dramatic transformation. Bills still needed juggling. The children still had difficult days missing their father, and Sarah still woke up some mornings with that heavy feeling in her chest. But something fundamental had shifted. She had faced her breaking point and survived it. Whatever came next, she would handle it, not alone, but with the support system she was slowly, deliberately building around herself and her children. Sarah's first day at her new job arrived with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She'd ironed her clothes the night before, prepared the children's lunches, and arranged for her mother to pick them up from school. Everything was organized, yet she still felt unprepared. "You look pretty, Mommy," Lily said as Sarah applied minimal makeup at the bathroom mirror. "Thank you, sweetie." Sarah smiled. realizing she'd forgotten what it felt like to dress professionally. The past few weeks of diner uniforms and work-from-home clothes had been purely functional. The healthcare facility was larger than she expected, a sprawling complex with multiple buildings. Sarah checked her phone repeatedly, following Rachel's instructions to find the administrative wing. The reception area was bright and modern, with comfortable seating and soft music playing in the background. "Sarah Turner?" A tall man with kind eyes approached, hand extended. "I'm Daniel Phillips, the department manager. Welcome to Central Health." The morning passed in a blur of introductions, paperwork, and system training. By lunchtime, Sarah felt overwhelmed by new information. She found a quiet corner in the cafeteria and checked her phone for messages from her mother about the children, relieved to see everything was fine at home. "Mind if I join you?" Sarah looked up to see a woman about her age, carrying a lunch tray. Her curly hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her smile was genuine. "Please do," Sarah replied, grateful for the company. "I'm Mia Rodriguez, from Records Management," the woman said, sitting down. "You're new in billing, right? I saw you during orientation." Something about Mia's straightforward manner put Sarah at ease. They chatted about the job, the complex layout of the facility, and the surprisingly decent cafeteria food. When Sarah mentioned her children, Mia's face lit up. "I have a 9-year-old, Tyler," she said, pulling out her phone to show a picture of a boy with her same curly hair and bright smile. "It's just the two of us. His dad's not in the picture." The casual way Mia shared this information, without shame or bitterness, struck Sarah. Here was someone who had rebuilt her life as a single mother and seemed genuinely content. "How do you manage it all?" Sarah asked before she could stop herself. Mia laughed. "Some days better than others. But having a good support system helps." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "This place is actually great for working parents. They don't advertise it, but there's an unofficial network." By the end of lunch, Mia had added Sarah to a group text with other single parents at the facility and invited her to a monthly potluck they organized. "No pressure," she assured Sarah, "but sometimes it helps to talk with people who get it." The following weeks established a new rhythm for Sarah's family. The job was challenging but satisfying, with clear expectations and a manageable workload. The regular paycheck brought a stability they hadn't had in months. Her mother continued to help with childcare, their relationship gradually warming through shared responsibility for Jason and Lily. One evening, while Sarah was helping Jason with homework, her phone buzzed with a message from the single parents group. It was Mia. "Emergency at work. Need someone to watch Tyler for 2 hours. Can anyone help?" Sarah hesitated. Her plate was already full, and adding another child to the evening routine seemed daunting. But she remembered how it felt to need help and have nowhere to turn. "I can take him," she texted back. "We're just doing homework and dinner." Tyler turned out to be a polite, self-sufficient child who got along well with Jason. By the time Mia picked him up, the boys had become fast friends, making plans for future playdates. "I can't thank you enough," Mia said at the door. "I don't usually find myself in binds like this, but my babysitter canceled last minute, and then work needed me for an emergency file review." "It's no problem," Sarah replied, surprised to find she meant it. "That's what the group is for, right?" The incident marked a turning point. Sarah had been so focused on receiving help that she'd forgotten the value of giving it. The next weekend, she attended the single parents potluck, bringing a simple pasta salad and both children. The gathering was held at a local park, casual and welcoming. About a dozen adults and various children shared food, conversation, and support. Some, like Mia, had been single parents for years. Others, like Sarah, were newly navigating divorce or separation. A few were widowed. Their circumstances varied, but they shared a common understanding of both the challenges and unexpected joys of parenting alone. "It took me a year to stop feeling like a failure," admitted Greg, a father of teenage twins. "Now I realize my kids are actually doing better seeing me happy on my own than miserable trying to save a broken marriage." His words resonated with Sarah. She'd been so focused on what her children had lost, the traditional two-parent family, that she hadn't considered what they might gain. A mother who was finding her strength and building a life that worked for them all. As autumn progressed, Sarah's support network expanded beyond what she could have imagined 6 months earlier. Rachel remained her closest friend, but now there was also Mia, who understood the specific challenges of single parenting and the wider circle from the support group. Even her relationship with her mother had evolved into something more balanced and respectful. One Sunday afternoon, Sarah was attempting to clean the gutters when she heard a voice from next door. "You might want a longer ladder for that." Her neighbor, Tom, an older man who had always been politely distant, stood at the property line with his own ladder. "Been meaning to do mine too. Mind if I help? For hands make quicker work." They spent the next hour cleaning gutters and talking about the neighborhood. Tom, a retired contractor, offered simple advice about home maintenance, things Mark had always handled. Before leaving, he showed Sarah how to check for loose shingles and reminded her to change the furnace filter before winter. "If you need help with anything else, just holler," he said. "My wife's been gone 3 years now, so I've got time on my hands." That evening, Sarah sat on her back step again, looking at the yard she'd finally started to reclaim from weeds. Lily was helping her mother prepare dinner inside, their voices drifting through the open window. Jason sat nearby, reading a book Tom had lent him about basic carpentry. The brokenness that had defined her life 6 months ago hadn't disappeared. There were still difficult days with the children, tense conversations with Mark, and moments when the future seemed uncertain. But around that brokenness, something new had grown, a network of relationships and mutual support that didn't require her to be perfect or entirely self-sufficient. Sarah took a deep breath of the cool autumn air. For the first time in a long while, she felt not just okay, but genuinely hopeful about what lay ahead. Winter arrived with its own set of challenges. The heating bill doubled, Jason needed new snow boots, and Lily caught a persistent cold that kept her home from preschool for a week. Sarah juggled work and childcare, grateful for her job's flexible sick leave policy and her mother's willingness to help on short notice. One morning in early December, Sarah arrived at work to find a small crisis in the billing department. A system update had gone wrong, creating a backlog of unprocessed claims that needed manual review. "We need all hands on deck," Daniel, her manager, announced. "I'm sorry, but we might need some overtime this week." Sarah's stomach dropped. She'd promised to attend Jason's winter concert that evening, and her mother wasn't available to take him instead. "I have my son's concert tonight," she explained to Daniel, preparing for the worst. To her surprise, he nodded understandingly. "Family comes first. Take care of that, and maybe you can come in early tomorrow instead." The relief was immediate. "Absolutely. Thank you." As she turned to leave his office, Daniel added, "My kids are grown now, but I remember those school concerts. Don't miss them. They're over before you know it." The comment stayed with Sarah throughout the day. Daniel had always been professional, but somewhat reserved. This glimpse of his personal life made her see him differently. That evening, Sarah sat in the elementary school auditorium watching Jason play a xylophone in the second row of the music ensemble. His face was serious with concentration, and when he spotted her in the audience, his smile was worth every juggled schedule and rushed dinner. "Did you see me, Mom?" he asked afterward, still holding his instrument mallets. "I saw you. You were amazing," she said, meaning it. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work an hour early as promised. The office was quiet, with only a few early birds present. She settled at her desk with coffee, ready to tackle the backlog. "You're dedicated," came Daniel's voice from nearby. He was standing in the doorway of his office, coffee mug in hand. "Most people would have found an excuse after having to work late. I appreciate flexibility when I need it, so I try to give it back," Sarah replied. Daniel nodded. "Makes sense. How was the concert?" "Off-key in the best possible way," she laughed. "But my son was thrilled I was there." Their conversation shifted to work, but something had changed in their dynamic. Over the following weeks, Sarah noticed Daniel making more of an effort to check in with her about projects and occasionally stopping by her desk just to chat. At the department holiday gathering, Sarah found herself seated next to him during lunch. They discovered a shared interest in hiking, something Sarah had enjoyed before the children were born, but rarely had time for now. "There's a great family-friendly trail at Oak Ridge Park," Daniel mentioned. "My wife and I used to take our daughters there when they were young." The casual reference to his wife answered the question Sarah hadn't asked. She'd noticed he didn't wear a wedding ring, but hadn't wanted to pry. "Used to?" she asked carefully. "She passed away 5 years ago," he said, his voice matter of fact, but with an undercurrent of old pain. "Cancer." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, meaning it. "My kids would probably love that trail. I should take them when the weather improves." The conversation moved on, But Sarah found herself thinking about Daniel later that day, not romantically, but with a new understanding. They both experienced profound loss, though of different kinds. There was something comforting about working with someone who understood that life rarely followed the expected path. As the holidays approached, Sarah faced another hurdle, her first Christmas post-separation. The children would be with Mark for Christmas Eve and return to her for Christmas Day. The thought of spending Christmas Eve alone filled her with dread. "Come to our house," Mia insisted when Sarah mentioned her plans during lunch. "We always have a big gathering on Christmas Eve. Family, friends, neighbors. It's chaotic and fun." "I wouldn't want to intrude on your family time," Sarah hesitated. "That's the point of our celebration. It's for anyone who needs somewhere to be," Mia explained. "Last year we had 3 international students who couldn't go home, my cousin who was going through a divorce, and my elderly neighbor who's alone. It's kind of our tradition to collect people." The invitation touched Sarah deeply. "Then I'd love to come. Thank you." Christmas Eve at Mia's house was exactly as promised, loud, warm, and welcoming. Her extended family embraced Sarah immediately, serving her homemade tamales and including her in their gift exchange game. By the end of the evening, Sarah had laughed more than she had in months. "Thank you," she told Mia as she prepared to leave. "This meant more than you know." Mia hugged her. "That's what friends do. And next year, you'll bring the kids too." The assumption of continued friendship, of a next year where things would be even better, stayed with Sarah as she drove home. Her house felt empty, but not in the devastating way she had feared. Instead, it felt like a temporary state, a pause before her children returned and life resumed its rhythm. The following morning, the children burst through the door full of excitement about their gifts from Mark and eager to see what waited under the tree at her house. Sarah had carefully budgeted for modest but thoughtful presents, and the joy on their faces confirmed she'd chosen well. After gifts and breakfast, they bundled up for a walk in the neighborhood. The fresh snow crunched under their boots as Lily ran ahead, trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Jason walked beside Sarah, suddenly reaching for her hand, something he'd recently decided he was too old for. "Dad says he might get married again," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on the sidewalk. To Allison, Sarah's step faltered. Mark had mentioned dating someone new, but marriage hadn't come up in their brief, practical conversations. She carefully controlled her expression, aware of Jason watching for her reaction. "How do you feel about that?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. Jason shrugged. "She's okay. She has a dog." He paused. "But it's weird." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Changes can be hard, even when the people involved are nice." "Will you get married again too?" he asked, his question innocent but complicated. "I don't know," Sarah answered honestly. "Right now, I'm focused on you and Lily and building our life together. But someday, maybe, if I met someone who would be good for all of us." Jason seemed satisfied with that answer. As they continued walking, Sarah realized she meant what she'd said. 6 months ago, the thought of another relationship had seemed impossible, a betrayal of the life she'd planned. Now, while not actively seeking it, she could at least imagine the possibility of letting someone new into their world, eventually, when the time was right. That night, after the children were asleep amid their new toys, Sarah called Rachel to wish her Merry Christmas. "How was your day?" Rachel asked. "Different," Sarah replied. "But good different, I think. We're finding our way." And they were, step by step, day by day, creating new connections and possibilities Sarah couldn't have imagined when her world first fell apart. Spring arrived, bringing with it Sarah's 1-year anniversary of separation from Mark. The date might have passed unnoticed if not for the reminder on her calendar to renew Jason's soccer registration. Last year, Mark had handled it. This year, it was one more item on Sarah's list. She sat at her kitchen table one Saturday morning, coffee in hand, making a list of upcoming expenses, soccer fees, Lily's new shoes, a birthday gift for her mother. For the first time in months, the list didn't fill her with dread. Her job was secure, her budget tight but manageable, and she'd even started a small emergency fund. "Mom, can we plant flowers this year?" Lily asked, interrupting Sarah's thoughts. She was kneeling on a chair, drawing with markers at the table. Sarah looked out at the backyard. The neglected garden beds were starting to show weeds again, but underneath was potential. "That's a great idea. What kind of flowers do you want to plant?" "Pink ones. And purple ones." Lily declared with the certainty of a 4-year-old. Later that day, Sarah and the children visited the local garden center. Jason showed surprising interest in vegetables, while Lily gravitated toward the brightest blooms. They left with seed packets, a few small plants, and basic gardening tools. "I can help you with the tilling," Tom called from his yard as they unloaded their supplies. "That soil's going to be hard after sitting and used." With Tom's guidance and tools, they prepared the garden beds. Sarah found unexpected satisfaction in the physical work, in turning over soil and planning where each plant would go. The children's enthusiasm waned faster than the tasks, but even their brief participation felt important. They were literally putting down roots in this new version of their life. Over the next few weeks, the garden became a family project. Jason took responsibility for watering, while Lily checked daily for signs of growth. When the first seedlings appeared, her excitement was contagious. "It's working, Mommy. The plants are growing." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, looking at the tiny green shoots. They just needed the right conditions and some patience. The garden wasn't the only thing flourishing. At work, Sarah received a positive 6-month review and a small raise. The additional income wasn't life-changing, but it allowed her to say yes to Jason's request for summer science camp, something she'd initially put in the maybe someday category. Her friendship with Mia deepened, expanding to include regular playdates between their children and occasional weekend outings as a group. Through Mia, Sarah met other people, parents from Tyler's school, Mia's brother, and his wife, neighbors from her apartment complex. Gradually, Sarah's social circle widened beyond the immediate support system she'd needed during crisis. One evening, after the children were in bed, Sarah sat on her back step looking at the garden. The spring planting was taking shape. Orderly rows of vegetables in one bed, Lily's colorful flowers in another. It wasn't perfect or particularly sophisticated, but it was thriving. Her phone rang. It was Daniel from work. "Sorry to call after hours," he began, "but I wanted to give you a heads up. There's a team lead position opening in the department. You should consider applying." Sarah was taken aback. "Really? I've only been there 6 months. And you've already become one of our strongest team members," Daniel replied. "Think about it. The posting goes live on Monday." After hanging up, Sarah remained on the back step, processing the conversation. A promotion would mean more responsibility, but also better pay and benefits. A year ago, she would have immediately dismissed the idea, convinced she couldn't handle one more thing. Now, she found herself considering the logistics, how it might work with her schedule, what additional childcare she might need, how the role would use her developing skills. The next morning, she called her mother to discuss the possibility. "I think you should go for it," her mother said without hesitation. "You've always been capable of more than you give yourself credit for." The comment surprised Sarah. Her mother had always been practical and somewhat critical, rarely offering such direct encouragement. "You think I could handle it with the kids?" Sarah asked. "I know you can," her mother replied. "And I'm here to help. That's what family does." The conversation marked another subtle shift in their relationship. Her mother wasn't just helping out of obligation or to control the situation. She genuinely believed in Sarah's abilities. When Monday came, Sarah applied for the position. The process would take several weeks, and there were other qualified candidates, but taking the step felt significant regardless of the outcome. That same week, Mark requested a meeting to discuss summer plans for the children. They met at a coffee shop, their usual neutral territory for co-parenting discussions. Mark looked well, happier than Sarah remembered seeing him in the final years of their marriage. "Allison and I are getting married in August," he said after they'd covered the logistics of summer schedules. "I wanted you to hear it from me first, before the kids mention it." Sarah nodded, surprised by her own lack of emotional reaction. "Congratulations. Jason mentioned she has a dog." Mark smiled. "A golden retriever named Charlie. The kids adore him." "That's good. They've always wanted a pet." The conversation continued, focused mainly on how the wedding and Mark's changing household would affect the children. It wasn't warm or friendly, but it was civil and productive, a significant improvement from their early post-separation interactions. As they prepared to leave, Mark hesitated. "You seem good, Sarah. More like yourself." The observation caught her off guard. "I am good. It took some time, but I'm figuring things out." "I'm glad," he said, and she believed he meant it. Whatever had gone wrong between them, and there had been plenty, neither wanted the other to suffer. On the drive home, Sarah reflected on how much had changed in a year. The divorce papers had finally been signed 2 months ago, making official what had long been reality. The legal process had been stressful but not devastating. By the time it was complete, she had already begun building her new life. That evening, the single parents group gathered for their monthly potluck, this time at a local park with a playground. As the children played, the adults talked and shared updates. "I got offered a job in another state," Greg announced. "Better position, more money, but it would mean moving my kids away from their mother, who only sees them every few weeks anyway. My ex's new girlfriend is trying to act like their mom, and I don't know how to handle it," another woman shared. "My son's struggling in school since the separation, and his teacher suggested counseling," a father admitted. The conversations were honest, sometimes painful, but undergirded by mutual understanding. Everyone there knew the delicate balance of rebuilding your own life while helping children navigate theirs. Sarah listened more than she spoke, but when asked about her progress, she shared both her promotion opportunity and her garden project. "It sounds small compared to everyone else's updates," she said, "but watching something grow that we planted together, it means something to us." "It's not small at all," Mia assured her. "Those are the things that make a life." Later, as they packed up to leave, Sarah invited several families to come see the garden the following weekend. "It's nothing special yet, but the kids are proud of it, and I thought maybe we could have a barbecue." The invitation, casual but deliberate, represented something significant. Sarah wasn't just receiving support anymore. She was creating community. Her home, once a place of failure and loss, was becoming somewhere she wanted to share with others. That night, she found Jason sitting on the edge of his bed long after she'd tucked him in. "Can't sleep?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Dad says after he gets married, we'll have 2 real homes," Jason said. "Is that true?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "You've always had 2 real homes, even when one of them was still getting set up. But yes, Dad and Allison will make a home for you, and we have our home here. But this one feels more real," Jason said, "because you're here all the time, and we have our garden and stuff." Sarah hugged him close. "Both homes are real. They're just different, and that's okay." After Jason finally fell asleep, Sarah stood in the hallway between her children's rooms, listening to their quiet breathing. They were resilient, these children of hers, adapting to circumstances she never would have chosen for them. And she was resilient too, finding solid ground where she'd once seen only quicksand. There were still uncertainties ahead: the promotion decision, Mark's upcoming marriage, financial challenges that never quite disappeared. But Sarah no longer viewed uncertainty as the enemy. It was simply part of the landscape of their lives, a terrain they were learning to navigate together. Sarah got the promotion. The news came on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by Daniel in person rather than through email or a formal meeting. "You were the strongest candidate," he told her. "Your organizational skills and attention to detail set you apart." Her new role as team lead came with a learning curve that sometimes left her feeling overwhelmed. There were additional meetings, performance metrics to track, and 4 team members looking to her for guidance. The first few weeks tested her confidence, but she found herself rising to the challenge, drawing on resilience she'd built through personal hardship. "How's the new position?" Rachel asked during their monthly lunch date. "Harder than I expected," Sarah admitted, "but in a good way. I'm using parts of my brain that have been dormant for years." Rachel smiled. "I told you that you'd be perfect for it." "You did," Sarah acknowledged. "Thank you for pushing me to apply." Summer brought its own rhythm to their household. Jason attended science camp 3 days a week, thriving in the structured environment and coming home full of facts about robots and chemical reactions. Lily split her time between preschool and days with Sarah's mother, who had started taking her to the community pool for swimming lessons. The garden flourished in the warm weather. Jason's vegetables produced enough for their table and some to share with neighbors. Lily's flowers attracted butterflies and hummingbirds, bringing unexpected life to their backyard. Sarah found herself spending evenings outside, sometimes reading, sometimes just sitting in quiet contemplation as the children played. In late July, Mark called with an unexpected request. "We need to talk about the wedding," he said. Specifically, about the kids' participation. They met again at their usual coffee shop. Mark seemed nervous, fidgeting with his cup as he explained. "Allison would like the kids to be part of the ceremony," he said. "Jason as a ring bearer and Lily as a flower girl." Sarah took a deep breath. This was more involvement than she'd anticipated. Have you asked them how they feel about it? We wanted to talk to you first, Mark replied. I know it's a lot to ask. It is, Sarah agreed. But this isn't about me. If they want to participate, I won't stand in the way. Mark looked relieved. Thank you. And there's one more thing. The rehearsal dinner is the night before. Would it be okay if they stay overnight at our place? I know it's not my regular weekend. A year ago, this conversation would have sent Sarah into an emotional tailspin. Every change to the custody schedule, every reminder of Mark's new life had felt like a personal attack. Now, she considered the request practically. That should work, she said. They'll need nice clothes for the ceremony. I can shop for those, or you can. Just let me know. They worked out the details amicably, and Sarah left feeling a quiet pride in her ability to separate her past hurt from her children's present needs. Mark was their father. His wedding would be part of their life story. Making it a positive experience was in everyone's best interest. When she explained the situation to the children that evening, their reactions were mixed. Jason seemed cautiously interested in his role, while Lily was immediately excited about wearing a special dress. Will you be at the wedding too, Mommy? Lily asked. No, sweetie. This is a special day for your dad and Allison. But I'll help you get ready, and I'll be right here when you get home. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy with preparations. Sarah took the children shopping for appropriate clothes, helped them practice their roles, and tried to answer their questions honestly, but age-appropriately. She coordinated with Mark about logistics, and even exchanged a few texts with Allison about Lily's dress fitting. The day before the wedding, as she packed the children's overnight bags, Sarah was struck by a realization. She felt no jealousy or resentment about Mark's new beginning. There was some wistfulness, certainly, a quiet acknowledgement of the dreams they'd once shared, but the sharp pain had faded. After dropping the children at Mark's house for the rehearsal dinner, Sarah returned to an empty home. The silence was noticeable, but not oppressive. She poured a glass of wine and sat in the backyard, looking at the garden they'd created together. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Team report looks great. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. Their text exchanges had become more frequent lately, usually about work, but occasionally venturing into personal territory. She appreciated his straightforward communication style and the respect he showed for her abilities. Thanks, she replied. Kids are at their dad's wedding rehearsal. Quiet house tonight. His response came quickly. Perfect night for that documentary series you mentioned wanting to watch. Sarah smiled. He remembered that conversation from weeks ago. Good idea. That's exactly what I'll do. The evening passed pleasantly with the documentary and an early night. The next morning, Sarah woke feeling rested and calm. She made coffee and checked her phone for any updates from the children, finding a text from Mark with a photo of them in their wedding clothes, looking excited and a little nervous. By evening, the children returned home full of stories about the wedding. They described the ceremony, the cake, the dancing, and the special attention they'd received as part of the wedding party. Sarah listened attentively, asking questions and affirming their excitement. Allison said we can call her Al, but not Mom. Jason reported matter-of-factly. She said we already have a mom who loves us very much. The comment caught Sarah by surprise. It was a considerate boundary, one she hadn't expected but deeply appreciated. After the children were in bed, Sarah sent a brief text to Mark. They had a wonderful time. Congratulations to you both. His reply was simple. Thank you for everything. The exchange marked a new phase in their co-parenting relationship, not friendship, exactly, but a mutual respect that prioritized their children's well-being over past grievances. As summer turned to fall, life settled into a comfortable pattern. Sarah's position at work became more familiar. The children started new school years, and their home continued to feel increasingly like their own space, filled with projects and memories they'd created together. One Saturday in early October, Sarah was raking leaves in the front yard when a car pulled into the driveway. It was Daniel, stopping by to drop off some work files she'd left at the office. I was in the neighborhood, he explained, handing her the folder. Thought you might need these over the weekend. Sarah thanked him, aware that her hair was windblown and her clothes were covered in leaf fragments. Would you like some coffee? It's the least I can offer for the delivery service. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Coffee would be great. They sat on the back patio, watching the children play with a neighbor's dog in the yard. The conversation flowed easily from work to weekend plans to Daniel's daughters, who were both in college now. I should get going, he said eventually, checking his watch. Thanks for the coffee. Anytime, Sarah replied, meaning it. As she walked him to his car, Daniel paused. There's a new exhibit at the Science Museum, interactive stuff about space exploration. My nephew loved it last weekend. Jason might enjoy it too. He would, Sarah agreed. I should look into that. Maybe we could take the kids together sometime, Daniel suggested, his tone casual, but with an undercurrent of something more deliberate. If you'd be interested. The invitation hung in the air between them. Sarah found herself smiling. I think we would be. Let me check our schedule and get back to you. After Daniel left, Sarah returned to her leaf raking, her mind processing what had just happened. It wasn't a romantic declaration or even clearly a date, just an invitation to do something simple with their children. Yet it represented a possibility she hadn't seriously considered until now. That evening, after the children were asleep, Sarah called Mia. Daniel from work stopped by today, she began, then explained the interaction. That definitely sounds like he's interested, Mia said. How do you feel about it? Sarah considered the question. Cautious, a little excited, mostly just surprised. Because you work together? Partly that, Sarah admitted. And partly because I wasn't looking for this. I've been focused on getting my life in order, not dating. Sometimes things happen when you're not looking, Mia pointed out. And sometimes that's the best timing. Later, as Sarah got ready for bed, she caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same one who had stood in this spot a year and a half ago, barely recognizing herself through exhaustion and despair. There were still signs of fatigue. Raising 2 children while working full-time ensured that, but her eyes were clearer, her posture more confident. She had built something from the rubble of her broken marriage, a home, a career path, a support network, and most importantly, a sense of her own resilience. Whatever happened with Daniel, whether it developed into something meaningful or remained a simple friendship, Sarah knew she would be okay. The ground beneath her feet was solid now, built through small daily choices and the steady work of rebuilding. As she turned out the light, Sarah made a mental note to check the family calendar. The Science Museum did sound like something Jason would love. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to open herself to new possibilities. Not because she needed someone to complete her life, but because her life had enough stability now to include new connections. The darkness felt comfortable around her, no longer the oppressive weight it had once been. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys, but tonight, Sarah rested in the knowledge that she and her children were not just surviving. They were growing through change, finding their way forward together.